Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mysidia Post. My name is Alex Scott, and today I am joined by Travis Pfeifer, and we're going to be reviewing some Opus X Fire cards. How you doing, Travis?
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me on the show. I've been a big fan for a long time, and I'm very pleased to join you.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm psyched to have you because it's not always the best doing it by myself. So I'm just honestly really excited to have somebody with me. And we've also got Bella over here somewhere that's going to be coming in and out of the shot
Excellent.
free of charge. So let's just get right to it. And we're going to start with the first card, which is Ignacio. So Ignacio is 5 CP, fire forward, 9,000 power, and when Ignacio deals damage to your opponent or to a forward, draw one card, discard one fire card. Ignacio gains 2,000 power till the end of the turn. So this is a card that I've already talked about a little bit in sealed and in limited in general, and it's a pretty strong card. And I think that for the most part, we're going to be talking about constructed today. Okay, so looking at Ignacio for constructed, the big thing that you're thinking about is he fast enough? Because he's 5 CP, which means he dies to the almighty Diabolos. But in fire, you can give him haste, and in fire earth, you have a lot of fight mechanics in order to gain advantage from his ability to draw a card. So I've actually been playing a Fire Earth deck on Untapped in the last couple of days, and it's been a ton of fun. And Ignacio's been working pretty well. He gets value really quickly, and when you play him in Earth, you can recur him. So even if he just draws you one time, I think that he's going to be worth it. I think that we're going to see a lot of experimentation with this guy.
Totally agree. In general, I don't really get scared of the whole Diabolos argument because, I mean, well, that affects anyone that's 5 cost or above. But, like, the fact that even when you bring him in, if they try to, let's say, nuke him right away, you can always pitch a fire card to buff his power up to make sure that he doesn't die. Like, that's really good. And he's got a nice little interaction, too, with party attacks where if you choose to deal his damage to both members of the party, you'll get to draw twice off of that. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's huge. And honestly, that action ability makes a huge difference for him in combat. And with most removal, I mean, the one thing about the Diabolus is that it's all about those ETBs that if you have stuff like Cloud of Darkness and Lena and things that once they're in, they've already served their purpose. But with him, there is a lot of ways that you can get value from him. And at the least, he's soaking up removal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the next card.
Sure. All right, so next we have Ifrit, which is a hero summon. Choose one forward, deal it 8,000 damage. All the fire forwards you control gain 2,000 power till the end of the turn. He's a 3 cost. This card is great. It almost outright replaces Brynhildr if it weren't for the fact that it's not an EX burst. So I guess the designers thought, well, there's enough value in EX burst that this will still, this won't just outright replace it. But I've always found 8,000 damage to be kind of the sweet spot of that'll take out most of the forwards you want to deal with. And in mono fire, I mean, my goodness, plus 2,000 to everything you've got on the field at the same time. Plus for that very popular Ifrit Afrita deck that's going on right now, this is just another Ifrit for you to run. Even though I have, heard some pushback against that because it's not an EX burst, but I think this card's fantastic.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, and it's going to be a really good combat trick to kill something and then boost something else. But it's so vital that it's an 8k damage on 3 CP because you're killing what the vanilla cost or power for a 4 CP forward. So you're often can get some very efficient trades that way, and that's something that Fire needed quite a bit to kind of get advantage over other elements.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't really even considered that combat, that you can block with something that looks weaker and then play the Ifrit, and not only are you now nuking a different forward, your blocker is now stronger than their forward. That's really good for 3 CP.
All right, so the next card is Bilasa, which is a 4 CP Fire Summon EX Burst. Choose one forward, deal it 2,000 damage for each backup you control. This card is fine in sealed. It's actually really good in sealed because you have to deal with a bunch of big forwards.
Right.
But for constructed, it's not going to be better than most of the other Fire EX Bursts. Like the EX Burst 8 or 10k is good, but it's so often not going to be that much when you EX burst, and you can't really control it. And you also don't really, even at 8k or 10k, you don't want to ever hard cast this card from your hand, because then you'd actually just be running one of the 4 CP Bahamut's instead. So I don't think the EX burst tag makes it worth it. I think it's something that they had to print for sealed.
Yeah, the artwork is my friend Stephen Riley would call these the line of Dr. Seuss characters. It has a very cartoony artwork. And there is currently a Fire Ifrit, which I think came out in Opus 8, that in Mono Fire, that Ifrit is better than this card at every backup with the exception of 5. So like at 5 backups, that Ifrit does 9,000, because I think it does like 4,000 base and 1,000 more for every backup you have. So in that case, this summon would only be superior to that one if you're at 5 backups, and even then only by 1,000. So I could maybe see this in Fire mix, like Fire and something, because it's not limited to Fire backups, which is nice. But yeah, I don't know, just kind of there. I agree.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. It is a full art, so a lot of these Dr. Seuss cards are full art cards, just because that's what we needed to see. So moving on.
Right. So it looks like next we have, Caius. Yes. I had a lot of thoughts about this card when it first came out. So Caius is a 4-cost 9k. When Caius enters the field, you may play one character of cost 3 or less from your hand onto the field. When Caius is put from the field into the break zone, select one character you control, put it into the break zone. So this card has a lot of potential. But it's also kind of scary because, you could easily, what if you turn 1, put down a backup, or put down Caius, and he brings in your backup, and then they like counter with something, Pfeifer or whatever, and then there goes both your Caius and your backup. So there are a couple ways around that. Since he has to go to the break zone, if you have a way to bounce Caius back to your hand or remove him from the game somehow, you won't have to take the negative effect. Obviously, he's a bit above curve, 4K or 4 CP, but 9K, which is very strong. And cheating in any character backup forward is really good. Plus, you could always theoretically see it that when he dies, maybe you're junking a backup you don't want. So I don't know. I really like the card. I like the potential of it a lot. I don't know how successful it will be. I'm the type of player that I don't have much success with these kind of like potential swingy cards. I usually end up on the wrong end of them. But what do you think about it, Alex?
The tricky part about it is the advantage of it is playing it early and getting a really fast build, but that's when you're going to get punished for it, because it's going to be great in decks where you want to sack certain backups like a Fire Lightning deck, or in Mono Fire. Mono Fire has a ton of 2 CP backups, has a ton of ETB backups, and sacking those so you can play more is really good, but by the time you play this, it might not be as advantageous when it's safer. It's going to be more advantageous when it's actually dangerous. So maybe in like a Fire Water deck where you run the 5 CP Una and then you can remove it yourself from the game. But otherwise, I'm not really sure. We're definitely going to see people trying this one because it's above curve too. That's the other thing. 4 CP 9K is really awesome. So I'm sure that we're going to see a lot of it. But will it actually make the cut? I don't know.
Agreed.
Okay, so the next one is I haven't actually said this one out loud. Gan Kana. It's a Goblin. And you put it into the break zone, 4 CP monster, put it into the break zone, deal 8,000 damage to a forward, and then deal it 10,000 damage if you're at damage 5. Again, good limited card. In terms of constructed, I don't really see much of a use for it because it's just slower than summon speed, and it can kind of be... It's just like, again, you're paying 4 CP for 8K. Like, that's not a great CP price point. It can be searched with the new, is it Verena, the monster searcher, Goblin searcher, and there's other monster searchers as well. So, I think that, we might see it around a little bit, but I don't think that I think it's more like pack filler, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree. Like you said, I don't know why you wouldn't just play a summon like the new Ifrit and just do the same thing. The only reason I could see you actually wanting to use this is if you have some kind of deck that benefits from having monsters on the field or having like a bunch of fire characters. I don't even know what kind of deck that would be, but that's the only reason I see why you would pick this over a summon.
Exactly. One other thing that I want to say here is that just from playing in pre-releases, I found that damage 5 isn't something that you can consistently bank on. Like, you shouldn't build your game plan about, oh, I'm going to get to damage 5 and do this, unless you're playing something like a Fusuya deck, because you just don't know when that part of the game is going to happen. So it's not like unless it's a really, really good damage 5 ability, it's not something that you should be like building around.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because, we'll get to this in Win, but there's a Win monster called Unsaganashi, and its damage 5 effect is great. Like, it's clearly a vastly stronger version of the normal effect, whereas this one just feels a little weak, like damage 5 just to do 2,000 extra damage. I don't know, that just seems like, I feel like this isn't one like, oh, if I could just get to damage 5, it's going to win the game. That just seems very unlikely.
Yeah, and we have, again, the 4 CP Bahamut that does 10k, but we've also got the Vermilion Bird Lassie that will boost all your fire summons so that you can just do what this thing does easier at summon speed. But the next card is actually kind of interesting.
Ah, yes, Mr. Cloud, hero of Final Fantasy VII, and loved by fanboys everywhere. One of my favorite characters, of course. So Cloud is a 2 CP backup. He has the Theater Rhythm art, which, I'm kind of hit and miss on the Theater Rhythm art. I find it cute and charming, but ultimately I think I prefer more the realistic art. Anyway, when Cloud enters the field, you may pay 2 fire CP. When you do, choose a dark forward and break it. Cloud also has a special ability, his Limit Break Cross Slash. It requires 1 special, 2 fire CP, and 1 colorless CP. And then you also have to tap Cloud. Choose up to 2 forwards. Divide 10,000 damage among them equally. So, Alex, if I'm understanding that right, the only possible options you have there is to do 5,000 and 5,000 or 10,000 and 0. Is that correct? Because it says divide among them equally.
Equally, that's actually kind of. Does it have to be 5,000 each? I never actually looked at that too hard. That's kind of. I would think
because it's not like Vincent, the Vincent that has the death penalty. It's like as long as it equals 7 cost, you can break however many forwards that add up to 7. But because it says equally, from my understanding, like it has to be 5,000 apiece, right?
Oh, but it is choose up to 2, so you can just choose 1 forward and deal it.
Yeah. So you can do either 1 10k or 2. So
okay,
I'm a big fan of backups that have specials, because that way, instead of just junking that extra backup where you're like, okay, it's a dead card, you can actually use it to play into the special. So like Deuce from Cadets, her Concerto special is really good. So I like that. But I mean, it's Cloud. There's so many good forward Clouds. I can't picture a situation where you're literally holding on to this to kill a dark forward. Like you're holding on to this card so that you can enter and kill the dark forward. And while the cross slash is good, it's also expensive. I don't know. It's an interesting card. Like maybe it would be great in title, but I can't see when you would ever use this and construct it over a forward Cloud. What do you think?
I totally agree. And I mean, the reason that Fenrir is so good in Earth, when we're seeing a lot of Veritas and stuff, is because it's a summon and you can hold on to that and recur that and do things with that. But with a backup, you just want to play backups. I mean, if you can go to 5 backups, you should go to 5 backups.
Right.
And if you do, then you can't play this if you didn't. So it's not really going to, like, it's often just going to be a 2 CP evoker. And the special, I really like that you mentioned that about using specials on backups, because that's where you're going to use them. I hate using them on forwards because then you lose an attacker. But this special essentially costs 6 CP. Which is really, really expensive. So I have a hard time thinking that it's going to see play.
Agreed.
Okay, so the next card is Zack, who is a 4 CP, 8k forward, and when he or a fire forward enters the field, you can deal 2,000 damage to a forward, and when Zack or a Final Fantasy VII a Final Fantasy VII forward enters the field, choose 1 forward and deal 2,000 damage to it. So right off the bat, when Zack enters the field, he does 4,000 damage to a forward. So he is Opus 1 Furion, but with a different name, and he's just better because he's got the ETB part of that, and Furion's a good ETB. It's a card that's like sneakily seen play throughout the game's history, but then he has an auto ability that's very, very powerful, and there's just so many, like even in this set that we're about to talk about, Soldier 3rd Class, that works really well with this card because it searches more cards that you can play, and then that's also a Final Fantasy VII forward, so you can very quickly rack up some ping. You can also combo this with Furion and Vivi and any other fire character or forward based ping, which is pretty neat. So I'm honestly like, there isn't really any Zacks that we're playing. Maybe the backup one. I guess the backup one's pretty decent, but I think that this Zack is going to be a home run for fire.
Absolutely. I run a 7 deck, which is kind of your standard Fire Earth 7 deck. But when I run my category decks, I'm very into making it the category characters. That, you know, I want all the characters to be 7. And yeah, right now I'm just running the backup Zack. I think this Zack is great. Like the idea that you could bring out Opus 8 Cloud, you know, the big 5k legend, on no damage. If you put him into the field, so you have no damage, he would do 3k on his own. He would do 4k from Zack, so he'd do 7k at no damage just for entering the field. Like, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I think this. I love the fact that it triggers twice, both on a fire forward and a 7 forward. That's really smart design. And he's on curve, 4k 8. You know, 4CP 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's great. I love him. I pulled 3 of them from my boxes, so I can't wait to put him into my 7 deck.
Yeah, he's honestly super exciting, and it is worth noting that the category 7 forward doesn't have to be a fire card, although I feel like you're going to just want to play this in all fire decks, but right. It could be something like a Wind Aerith could come in the forward, and then you could ping something for 2k, which is kind of neat. All right, moving on, we have our first legend to talk about.
Ah, your Emperor has arrived. Well, this one isn't actually Emperor Zhan D, which is important to note because you can actually play this card with Emperor Zhan D since they have 2 different names. So, Zhan D is... a lot of Final Fantasy III love this set, by the way. A lot of summons and cards are from Final Fantasy III. So, Zhan D costs 8 CP. When he enters the field, he's a 9k forward. When he enters the field, choose up to 1 fire forward of cost 1 and up to 1 fire forward of cost 3 in your break zone. Play them onto the field. Then if you're at 5 damage, he has those effects, and you can choose a fire forward of cost 2 in your break zone and play it onto the field. So when this card first came out, me and my buddies were talking, and one of them was really into fire, and I thought it really had a lot of potential. In particular, the big swing play we pictured is you're at 5 damage, you drop Zhan D, you choose Godot, who is a 2-cost forward, and he summons another 2-cost forward. So you put out 2 2-cost forwards, a 1-cost, a 3-cost, and Zhan D. So boom, you just got 5 forwards on the board. I want to really like this card. So let's say you're not at 5 damage, and you can get 2 forwards off it regardless. So you could argue he's a 4 CP character because you're going to get 2, cards back. The problem is there's honestly just not that many great 1-cost fire forwards. We got 2 more in this set, and I think one of them is okay. One of them I think is just forgettable. And I mean, there's some good 3-cost ones you can play. Iroha, Bergen is another really good one. To be able to cheat him and would be good. So it has some potential, but I don't know. Like, do you really want to drop 8 CP into that? And then the 2-cost too, like Godot is good. Maybe the Warrior of Light that like gives everyone 2,000, and he can have haste if there's a lot of forwards. So I can see the potential of this, but is anyone actually going to use it? I just don't know. I'm kind of very torn on that. What do you think, Alex?
It's a lot of setup to have the Godot combo off playing him, because you have to be a damage 5, and then you have to have Godot and a Godot target in your hand. So I feel like that's a really tough one to build for. The the dream play that I always think of is if you have Zack out and you play Zhan D, then you can do so much damage. If you have Zack out and then you play Zhan D and you play like 1 CP Vivi and you play Palom, the 3 CP Palom. When he's played from anywhere but your hand, he deals 7k on entry. Like 7k on entry on a 3 CP 7k with like his special too deals a point of damage. Like that, I think that's actually going to be the one of the sneaky best cards to play with Zhan D. But I don't think that overall Zhan D is going to be that powerful yet, but the neat part about this card is that it can only get better. The more cards that get printed, it's only going to get better. The 1 CP slot is the one slot that I'm worried about because we don't see 1 CP cards printed that often. So we'll have to kind of see what we get in future sets that can support Zhan D a little bit.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the setup factor in that. I would love to see this card do well, but it's so much setup. I don't think right now you're going to see it a lot. That being said, I'm such a fan of Yoshitaka Yamano's artwork. Like, this card looks great.
This is one of the better ones too. Like, there's lots of good ones, but this one I really, really like the art on this one.
Agreed.
Okay, so Soldier 3rd class, 3 CP, fire forward. It's a standard unit, so it's multi-playable. It's got 5,000 power and first strike, and it searches for itself when it enters the field. And this will be really neat if we ever see another one printed. But in the meantime, it's just it's a really nice little chain play where it's a 1 CP forward, and then you can play it twice, and then the third one you're pitching for CP. And first strike, it couldn't have been in a better color because Fire has a lot of different ways to actually like ping with that first strike. So if you ping someone and during combat, and then he's going to hit them before they can actually deal damage to the soldier, and then you'll be able to take out your opponent's forwards pretty quickly. And this also combos really well with Zack. So I think that this is a sneaky good card. I saw when it came out, people were underrating it a little bit, and hopefully that's changed, because I think that this might actually be pretty decent.
Yeah, I agree. First strike, I think, is one of the strongest abilities in the game. Under the right circumstances, it can basically make a forward immune to damage for a turn, like battle damage. Nothing can beat them in battle if it's got first strike. So yeah, I agree, especially with Fire's ability to ping. They might think, oh, well, I've got an 8K swinging in, but I pinged it for 3, blocked with this guy, he does first strike, he lives, and they die. So I agree.
Yeah, so looking at the next 2 cards are going to be our 1 CP forwards, but the next one is pretty fringe.
What is the deal with this card? Okay, so this is Onion Knight 3, of course. Again, they love category 3. It's 1 cost and it's 2,000 power. And it was built for its ability. If you control 4 or more backups, and if the backups you control are all of different elements, Onion Knight gains 6,000 power. So if you were able to somehow satisfy this condition, you're playing a 1 cost 8K character. Obviously, based off just those stats alone, that's incredible. The problem is getting backups of that many different elements. Like, I'm sure someone out there is going to try to run an Onion Knight deck with all these colors, but I just don't understand. And they clarified too that if you have a backup like Shantoto, which actually has all the elements, then that doesn't count. That doesn't actually satisfy the requirements. So they all have to be different. I don't know. I get what they were trying to go for with these cards, but I think the condition is just way, way too difficult to satisfy. I would have much rather seen something maybe a little more expensive with an easier to satisfy condition, because I just don't see why anyone would ever play this.
Yeah, and I think the only deck that can play that many colored backups is Mughals, and that's not even a consistent way to do it, because we're not seeing Moogle decks. So I don't think that this guy will see play, but we haven't talked about title yet. This could be actually pretty neat in title, because you could satisfy this very easily in title.
That is true.
And then just play a ton of Warrior of Lights as well. So it could be this Warrior of Onions deck, title deck. So look for it.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay, moving on, we've got another 1 CP forward. This is Nagi, 1 CP, 7K. Nagi cannot attack, and he cannot become dull by your opponent's summons or abilities. This card, that's a really nice stat line, and because he can't become dull, he is a pretty neat blocker against some ice decks, and Zhan D can bring him back, which is pretty neat too. But even if you play him for 1 CP, your opponent can't get by him without combat trick or removal, because he won't ever be dull. So they're not going to use something like Cecil. They're not going to be able to use any sort of ice things. So if he trades with your opponent's forward, guaranteed your opponent's forward costs more than he did. If they use removal on him, guarantee that removal costs more than he did. So he's going to be really efficient that way. But the only issue is that if he's not attacking, then that's such a massive downside. It more than kind of puts this card in the black for its benefits. So overall, I don't think we'll see play unless it's some sort of defensive deck, or if like something like Fire Ice was really beating up on a fire deck, then you might put this in to stop block. But otherwise, I don't really see this card doing much.
It seems like it's built for Zhan D. It seems like it was built to be cheated in with him. Like you said, I'm glad it can't become dull, because if it weren't for that line of text, this card would be worthless. But the fact that he basically is at least a guaranteed blocker for you, that's really nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this next card is possibly one of the best fire cards in the entire set.
Agreed. I was very excited when I saw this card. So this is Geomancer, 3-cost backup, standard unit, so you can have multiple of them. And I'm definitely going to put this in my fire deck and try it out. When Geomancer enters the field, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a fire card, add it to your hand. Then it has an action ability where you can simply tap Geomancer and put it in the break zone, choose a forward, deal it 2,000 damage. I think the design of this card is excellent. I don't know if you would use it in multicolors, but in mono fire, like, you're guaranteed to draw a card. So it's basically 1 CP. And the fact that it can just then break itself with no extra added cost, like, it doesn't really even matter if the 2,000 like ends up killing something. Like, if you just need to clear it out as a backup, you can just break it to put something else down. Like, wow, what a great design. Like, I'm so used to fire cards having some weird drawback that, like, you know, I would have expected this card, but when he enters the field, you also deal one of your own forwards 2,000 damage. No, it's just a solid card. I love it. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, you said it all. The action ability is pretty neat, and they could have printed it with no action ability, and it still would have been fine. So yeah, I just think it's a really good card.
Absolutely.
Okay, next up is Furion. He is a 3 CP 7k forward. If you control 3 or more fire backups, Furion gains haste. If you control 5 or more fire backups, he gains 2,000 power and first strike. This is a mono fire card, obviously. I'm not that into it because it's just too slow. The gaining haste isn't that relevant for me. Fire already has lots of haste. And we've seen 3 CP 7k haste forwards before. We've seen stuff like Estinian, things that you can like get going like Go-Go, and even if you try to build around those cards, like, it takes setup just like this card will take setup. Having that haste on that power isn't that relevant. So what's really huge is the 2,000 power and first strike, because then all of a sudden you do have a beater on a really efficient body, but at the time that's going to come in the game, it might not be as relevant because removal is going to be able to deal with him as it would with any card. So I don't think it's a bad card. I would have liked to see a better effect on the 3 or more backups slot, because it will take, like, that 5 backup setup is not going to be. It's not always going to be easy for you to do or easy to get.
So this is going to be the first time we really disagree. The way I play Mono Fire is I play it with a very forward emphasis, and I almost always get to 5 backups, and I get to them very quickly. So for me, this card seems incredible because I'm always running Lebro. So if I'm putting this down on 5 fire backups, I've got a 10,000 first strike haste character coming at you. That's pretty insane. Now, I understand, again, some people play fire differently. They go for more the ping, and you're right. If you're not getting to those big backups, I agree that the haste on its own, that part's probably not interesting. So in my eyes, I see that, 2,000 first strike, that's going to be excellent. So in my head, I'm going to get there because that's how I play the deck, but I also wouldn't be surprised if I try to do that and I just, like, it never happens. I'm like, no, I'm always stuck on 4 or 3. So I like this. I actually think it's got a lot of potential, but I can absolutely see why this wouldn't be for some people.
I think we need to keep a tab on it and come back to this in a future video and kind of have like what did we get wrong and what did we get right, and
that's a great idea.
Just so you can like throw a I told you. So I totally think this is a card I could end up being wrong about, but just with my gut, I honestly haven't played with it yet, so that's part of it too. But I certainly hope you're right. Moving on.
All right, this is Mutsuki from Type 0, Agito Cadet. She's a 4-cost backup. When a forward opponent controls is put from the field into the break zone, you activate Mutsuki. She has an action ability. You just tap her, choose one forward opponent controls, deal it 1,000 damage. If I'm not mistaken, there's a 2-cost version of this, which literally does the same thing. You deal it 1,000 damage. So if I'm not mistaken, I hope I'm not messing this up, basically, this costs 2 more CP with the added benefit that if something's dying, you reactivate her so you can ping again. So I can definitely see this having use, in the current Ifrita deck, because that deck does run the 2-cost Mitsuki, and a lot of times it will try to finish people off with that ping. So I could see this being good in that, wanting to do that ping a lot. At the same time, I don't know, 4 CP is a lot of CP for a backup that doesn't do anything when it first comes in and needs a whole turn before you can even start doing something with it. So I could also see this being like, I wouldn't even bother with this over the cheaper version. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You have to be efficient in FFTCG, and as soon as you play a 4 CP backup, you're down a card compared to what your opponent is playing almost all of the time. So you have to make that up in some way. So things like 5 CP Yuna obviously have ways to mitigate that with their ETBs and with the kind of the virtual advantage that they provide. You have to build around this card. So you're playing things like 3 CP Vivi and Furion and all these cards that hopefully there's like turns where you can ping something, finish it off with Mitsuki, and then play another thing, like you play a Vivi, then you play a Furion, and every time she's just adding 1k to these cards, and if you have a Roja, then that adds on even more, and like maybe she can just like help you finish off a bunch of things, or even if you had like some sort of like Fina 5k to the board, you have a Roja out, and then you're like pinging something for 2k, she reactivates, you ping something for 2k, she reactivates. Like there's some combo, but I don't think at all it's a consistent thing that you could do. So I don't think it's going to be worth it. I think it's kind of neat that she's holding a grenade though. I mean, that's pretty chill.
Yeah, I do love that artwork. And actually, just thinking about it just now, I've seen that Fire deck played a lot. And the thing is, like, they're already hitting you for so much damage. Like, I've never seen them be like, oh, man, if only I had that extra 1,000. Like, so I just don't see why they would choose this one over the cheaper version, which just does that. So, I mean, maybe I'll be proved wrong, but yeah, I can't see this one being used very much.
Oh, jeez. I wish I had a 4 CP backup that did 1,000 more damage.
Right? Yeah.
Gosh, that would be so neat. Okay. Moving on, we've got a class first Moogle, and it's the 2 CP backup, pay 1 generic CP, and dull him to choose a fire forward and give it 1,000 power. I actually like. I don't think these cards are good necessarily, but I'm kind of interested in them because there's some decks that float CP or don't have stuff to do with their CP, and this is kind of a neat way to not lose any advantage on opposed to playing Lebro or like a different booster.
Yeah.
If you don't need to boost that often, then this is okay, but I mean, for the most part, I think this card is just kind of neat.
Yeah, there a bunch of these came out in Opus 9, and I never saw a single one of them played in any element. So, but maybe they'll start showing up now. But I don't know. Until I start seeing them, I think they're kind of just filler cards.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess it's irrelevant to mention they're Mughals, but to be honest, we're pretty saturated with Mughals. Like if you're building a Moogle deck. You're not going to have a shortage of the furry little guys. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, we've got another Moogle coming up here.
So, yeah, speaking of Mughals, okay, so again, in line with the Opus 9 color fixing Mughals, this is class second Moogle. I like the artwork. He looks like a little Lancer. He's a 2 CP backup. if Class 2nd Moogle is on the field, he can produce Ice CP. He's a fire card. So, all these Moogles that can do dual elements, like, I think they're inherently good based off their description. As far as this one, I don't know what this will get used in. Like, the most common Ice Fire package is the Final Fantasy VI version, and that one's already really set on backups, and in particular, it wants 6 category backups. So I don't feel like they'd put this in there, especially because I've never seen that deck have trouble, like, color fixing. So maybe some other version of Fire and Ice. I don't really know what other versions there even are, but yeah, this one might be a little less used compared to some of the other color Moogles.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I've looked at this to splash an ice card, and I'm not actually sure. Like, you're right. Like, I don't know what ice card I would splash. But one card that it enables, which is kind of neat, is Chaos Mobius.
Oh yeah, that's
so
true.
That would be in a mono fire. It would be a 6 CP dark forward that would deal 5k to your opponent's board and make them discard a card, and then suddenly that becomes a more relevant play because you can combo that with Ifrita if you really want to spend some CP, or you can just combo that in general with other fire ping, and then making them discard makes it all worth it. I mean, look at the new Skyla or whatever for the ice 7 CP forward. Like, that having that discard makes it playable, and it previously was pretty expensive in mono fire, so that might be a niche application for it.
That's true. You could also run Lastwell with this, the Opus 8 one, where like he can ping fire when he comes in. So this would let you throw him into a fire deck as well.
I actually really like that. The only thing is that you can't. Again, it's something that you're going to do later in the game, and
right, yeah.
At that point in mono fire, play Yuri. Because
exactly,
he gets fire powers, right? He gets the boost from Lebro and stuff. So just play Yuri. It does sound really good though. Like, oh, Lastwell, yeah, that's good.
Right, yeah.
Okay, next up we have Lon. He's a 2 CP fire forward, 5,000 power. If you control a card named Rain, Lon gains 2,000 power and first strike. So 7k first strike is pretty neat. It's not bad. And then when he enters the field, choose one monster that is also a forward. Until the end of the turn, it gains 5,000 power and brave. That is incredible with the 2 CP little World of Final Fantasy monsters that we saw a few sets ago. Was that Opus 7?
The Frit and the Babbliz and the...
Because those things live to die. That's their purpose on this planet, is to die and get you a summon. So it's a real shame when you have to attack with them and then they're dull and can't block. So for them, they're going to go up to 10k brave. They're getting a point of damage in, and then they're going to be up to block the next turn. That is really neat. This also does work with those monsters that only become forwards on your turn that we saw last set. I didn't really like most of those. Like, my favorite one of those was the Marlboro.
He was my favorite too. He was my pre-release MVP.
But I don't think you're playing World of Final Fantasy Firewater. He was the pre-release MVP for me too. But the one that actually saw play out of those monsters was Goblin, and Goblin's irrelevant because if you give him 10k brave and he attacks, he dies when he attacks because he's going to deal a point of damage. So I guess it kind of guarantees that, but Mono Lightning already guaranteed that with the amazing powers of dulling forwards. So I think that you're running this in a World of Final Fantasy deck with the World of Final Fantasy monsters, which will all come in handy later on when we talk about our other World of Final Fantasy legend.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love the card, love the artwork. Only thing, honestly, that even gives me pause about it is that I love the Opus 7 Lon so much. The one that's 8k, and then he can do his damage to everyone every time he attacks. Like, that one is just so good that, that's the only thing is the name clash. But otherwise, I like the card.
Yeah, I actually, this is a full art, and I opened this in full art in my box.
Nice.
It is a real beaut. So please contact me. That is for sale to you. Okay, moving on.
Let's see. This is, I believe it's Rid, or perhaps Ryad. He's a generic 5k 5 cost 9k beater. Agido Cadet. At damage 3, he gains Brave. At damage 5, he gains 2,000 power. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of cards like this in the game that get Brave and power up. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see why you'd run this card. Like, if you're going to run a 5 cost, I feel like you want something that's going to have a much bigger impact. And the fact that for 2 points of damage in the game, he doesn't even get any special bonuses. Why would you run this over Ignacio? I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's for limited format. That's all.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, we can move right on from that. So the next one is Luce or Luce. I don't actually know. I haven't gotten that far in World of Final Fantasy. Luce? Okay, nice.
Yeah, I've platinumed the game, so.
Okay, there you go. So it's a 2 CP fire or backup. The cost required to play her is reduced by 1 for every card named Lon or Rain. So essentially, if you have Lon and Rain out, she's a 0 CP backup, which is pretty neat. So you can dull her to choose Lon or Rain and give them Brave. This is great because if you're playing World of Final Fantasy, it's just a World of Final Fantasy character for you, but this could even see play. I mentioned this in my spoiler article for it a while ago. This could actually see play with the backup Rain. You search your 4 CP Legend Lon, and all of a sudden you've got a 1 CP or a 2 CP backup, and all of a sudden that forward Lon has a power boost. It's got Brave now, and I think that's could be like a little mono fire package.
Yeah.
This is also just going to be really good with the Rain that we're going to talk about next, and it'll be fine with this other Lon because a 2 CP 7K with First Strike and Brave, that's also pretty neat because First Strike is very powerful on defense.
Yeah. You said it all. This card's fantastic.
Okay, then let's talk about the legend.
All right, so this is the other fire legend of the set, Rain, 5 cost, 8K. So the most important thing about this card is that I pulled 3 of them from my boxes. I pulled a regular version, I pulled a foil version, and I pulled a full art foil version. Yeah,
wow.
That's the important thing about this card.
Yeah, that's all that we need to know.
Exactly. So 5 cost, 8K. The cost required to play Rain onto the field is reduced by 1 for each category of World of Final Fantasy character you control. So like Luce before her, if you've got 5 characters, she's free, which is awesome. The category World of Final Fantasy forwards other than Rain you control gain haste. When a category World of Final Fantasy forward you control attacks, choose 1 forward opponent controls and deal it 4,000 damage. When this card was first revealed, I was actually a little disappointed, only because I was kind of hoping for something that would just be generically good in fire, whereas this is obviously, wants to be played in a World of Final Fantasy deck. But man, what doesn't this card do? It can potentially be free. Every World of Final Fantasy forward can gain haste. Any of them attack and they're pinging for 4,000. It's just fantastic. It does so much. Wow, what a great card.
I love this card, and I love these abilities when you put them on a forward, because forwards are so easily removable that it makes it really fair to have all this advantage, because you can't ever put this kind of stuff on a backup because backups will just stick around.
Right.
So we've already seen how good Alize is in Scions, giving haste to everything. It really puts your opponent on a clock. So this is really only going to worry about that wind matchup, because things like Diabolos and Alexander are going to blow up this card fairly easily. That's where, again, it's reduced cost comes in handy, because it doesn't matter if your opponent played their Diabolos for free, you're probably playing this card for free as well.
Right.
So you can kind of laugh it off and say, well, hey, it doesn't really matter because I only paid, let's say 1 CP for this card, and then maybe there's a card coming up that brings it back from the breaks. I don't know.
Right. I'm definitely going to try this package. Again, just the idea that your 4,000 Frit, which like you said, you want it to die, you can swing into an 8K with that thing, ping it for 4. It's go ahead, block. You're just going to kill yourself with it. Yeah, this card's excellent. Can't wait to try it.
You're gonna block, lose your forward, and I'm gonna draw a summon for my deck.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
One thing you will want to watch out for is, again, the Diabolos and the Alexander just because you're going to be playing this with Lawn, and I want you to be very careful with your Lawn First Strike and Power Boost.
Right.
If this Rain goes boom, even if it was efficient play, your Lawn goes back down to 5,000 power. So just be really careful with that kind of thing.
Right, because they can do that on the stack, and then suddenly, oh, you're not ahead, and boom, you lose your forward.
Okay, so the final card, non-starters included, is Rorick. He is a 3 CP Fire backup EX Burst. When Rorick enters the field, choose one card named Lawn or card named Rain in your break zone, add it to your hand. EX Burst is just so good that it makes this a decent card. Like this, obviously, in a World of Final Fantasy deck, this is a no-brainer. You're going to run a ton of them. It makes all of your, like, makes your Rain cheaper, and it brings your Rains back. If your Rains are playing for like 2 CP, 1 CP, 3 CP, and then you're bringing them back and you're playing them over and over, your opponent can remove them as many times as they want, and she's just going to keep returning. And this could even be good if we ever see like other versions of Lawn come back, like the legend one, then this will again still be pretty good. We see people running Zack to bring back Cloud, so it's kind of a similar thing. And because it's card name, this is actually a discounted minor backup for the Rain 4 CP backup. So it's like this super niche EX Burst minor if you really want to see it.
Right.
You have to you have to really want to see it though.
Of course. No, it's excellent. I love the artwork. I love the cute little dog floating beside him. 3 cost the expert. Yeah, you said it all. Like, it's great. I can't wait to run this package. It looks really fun.
Okay, so I'm going to give the next one to you. It's our first starter card.
Oh, ace. Okay, so it's 2 cost backup, class 0 cadet, name Ace, because for some reason they think in a game with 14 cadet characters that we should only make cards of 2 of them. I'll get to that in a moment. But here's what the card does. So when Ace enters the field, you select one of the following 2 actions. You choose the forward opponent controls, deal it 5,000 damage. Or you can pay 3 fire CP, and you'll choose a forward, and then you'll deal it 9,000 damage. So this card is great. 2 CP, 5k burn. It's very solid. And I love the fact that you can choose that if you need that big burn, you can just totally delete a forward with this card. It's fantastic. My only complaint is, why isn't this card called Cater? As someone who is Platinum Type 0 and I run a Type 0 deck, like it's just very frustrating that every ace is good, but we don't need any more aces. Square, we've got aces. We've got ace, we are the ace of spades. We've got aces up our sleeves for days. We've got rems. We don't need you to keep printing those cards. There's one card named Cater, and she sucks. So if this card was Cater, oh my gosh, I would feel so good in cadets. But my rant aside, the card off its base stats is very good. Like it a lot.
And that's where it gets a pass from me, even though they printed 2 aces last set, which is insane to me, and I'm totally frustrated for the same reasons. But this card, I don't really see it as a card for Type 0 cadets. I see it as a fire card that is really good, and that can.
Yeah.
And as soon as this dual deck came out, this ace card went into every single deck running fire. If you looked at an FF decks, every single deck was playing it, because it's an objectively a very good card. So it doesn't need to be necessarily in your cadets deck. It's just a good inclusion in a fire deck.
Absolutely. And I want to comment on the design aspect of this card. This card has very smart design. We saw some cards released in Opus 9 that several of them had the effect that if your opponent controls more forwards than you do, this effect goes off. Well, we didn't really ever see much of those see play, because again, that's a very kind of random effect that you can't necessarily control. So I love that this card has, hey, 2 CP, 5k nuke, or if you wish, you can control choosing to do a bigger burn. I think that's very good design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. The flexibility makes it, for sure. Okay, the final card we're going to talk about is a doozy, and now that Opus 10 is out, you can get this card in foil in your booster packs, and Here is my hot take. You're going to want to stockpile these. If you get this in foil, don't play it, put it in a protector, and get ready for the value to rise. everybody's looking for it because especially some of these Worlds players want to put in their Worlds decks. But in general, this is going to be in a lot of, it's a good card and people are going to want to foil it out. So if you're like me and you're a value guy, then you want to sell these big time. Okay, so Terra is a 4 CP fire forward with 5,000 power and an EX burst. When she enters the field, choose one summon in your break zone, add it to your hand. That's already really good. That's a very nice effect. And then when you cast a summon, and it's any summon at all, it's going to deal 2,000 damage to a forward, which is, again, really nice. One of the biggest synergies with this card is 7 CP Phoenix, which was already an incredible card, but wasn't. Its weakness is that it dealt 8,000 damage, which wasn't always enough. And sometimes you had to ping or with it with combos with VV and other cards, and that felt kind of bad because then you're just bringing back a dull 4K or something. But now, not only can you recur those Phoenixes over and over, you can cast them and then deal 10k to something and then bring a better forward back like Lise or Iroha or Locke or whatever card it is that you want to return.
Have you gotten to see the Ifrita deck? Yeah, there was versions of it at Nationals and a lot of people at my locals use it. Have you gotten to see that deck at all?
The control based fire deck?
Yeah, where you basically just blow everything up.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so this card is what enabled that deck. And when I first read this card, I actually thought it was kind of but it was because I misread it. Like, for whatever reason, the way I read it was that, oh, when your summon deals damage, the summon just does that much more damage. But because of the fact that Terra gets to choose where that ping goes, makes it really nice because, you can kind of do some spot removal that way, like. And the fact that it's an EX burst, so you don't even care if it gets hit into damage, and you can pull back any summon. So not only is this good mono fire, any deck you're running with, it can pull back any of those summons. Like, wow, this card has really, like you said, you absolutely nail it when you're like, if you've got a foil version of this, wrap it up and get ready to earn some money because, yeah, this card is clearly beloved. And it's also, Terra's such a great character from 6. Mm-hmm. It's nice to see her get a really strong card because, I don't know, I kind of felt like most of her other cards were kind of just So it's nice to see one that's just like kind of taken the meta by storm, if you will.
I'm so happy they put this in fire. If they had put in any other element, that would have been questioned quite a bit. If they put in ice, for sure. Oh, they did put it in ice, but I guess we'll have to talk about that next time.
Yeah, no kidding. In general, I really like a lot of the cards Fire got this set in particular. So there's been kind of a discussion about whether, did Fire actually change much? Like, doesn't it kind of still do the things it does? And I can see the merit in that. In particular, what I like about these cards is that, for me, what I've always disliked about Fire is a lot of Fire cards always seem to have very weird negative side effects. Like, you can't just, play it makes you discard a card, or it makes you break your own forward, or something goofy. And so I really appreciate that almost all the cards in this set are just straight. No, yeah, this is what it does. It just does this effect, and you don't have to hurt yourself to do it.
Yeah, here's a card that without some sort of like glaring side effect that you have to deal with to play this element. They're finally kind of coming around on that, which is really nice to see.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's going to be it from us for today, but we're going to come back again before too long with another element review. So until next time, this has been Alex Scott.
And Travis Pfeifer.
And we'll see you next time for Ice.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe to support us further, and you can read the Mysidia Post articles at themysidiapost.com. You can also check out our Patreon if you want to support us more. And if you need FFTCG singles, then look no further than Cards That You Release. They've got great deals and prices. Check them out. Finally, I'd like to thank FF Decks for creating the best website for creating your Final Fantasy trading card game decks. They've also got a Patreon, so make sure you go check them out. They work so hard for the community, so let's pay them back. See you next time.